The storm came like a vengeful spirit across the Texas Panhandle, turning the drought-cracked earth into a battlefield of mud and lightning. Cole McKenzie stood on his porch, watching the heavens unleash their fury upon Silver Springs Ranch, his weathered hands gripping the Winchester that had become his constant companion these past 3 years. 3 years since Elena died. 3 years since little Rose followed her mother into the darkness. 3 years since Cole had learned that grief could hollow out a man's soul until only the shell remained. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the cottonwoods that bent like mourners before the wind. In that brief electric moment, Cole saw something that made his heart skip. A horse riderless, stumbling toward his barn with the desperate gait of an animal pushed beyond all endurance. "Easy there," he murmured, stepping into the rain. The droplets felt like cold tears against his scarred face, each one a reminder of how long he'd been waiting for something, anything to break the monotony of his self-imposed exile. The horse collapsed just short of the barn door, foam flecking her muzzle sides, heaving with exhaustion. Cole approached carefully, his bare feet finding purchase on the slick ground. This wasn't just any horse. The silver conchos on her bridle, the tooled leather saddle with its distinctive Mexican craftsmanship, this animal had traveled far to reach his doorstep. It was then he saw the blood, dark stains on the saddle horn, more on the stirrup leather. Someone had been hurt, and recently. Cole's ranger instincts, dormant for 3 years but never truly dead, sparked to life. He scanned the darkness, searching for signs of pursuit or ambush, but found only the endless Texas night and the crying of the wind. The mare whinnied softly, turning her great head toward the creek that gave his ranch its name. Silver Springs, where the water ran clear even in the driest seasons, fed by underground sources his Apache grandmother had never fully explained to him. That's where he found her. The woman lay half submerged in the shallow creek, her dark hair streaming around her face like black silk. The water, normally crystal clear, swirled pink with her blood. She was unconscious, but breathing, and obviously with child, perhaps 6 months along by Cole's inexperienced estimation. For a moment that stretched like eternity, Cole froze. The sight of her there, vulnerable and bleeding, brought back memories he'd spent 3 years trying to bury. Elena lying in their bed after the fever took her. Little Rose, no bigger than a whisper, growing cold in his arms. But this woman was still breathing, still fighting. Cole waded into the creek, the cold water shocking his system into action. She was lighter than he'd expected, though her condition made him handle her with the care he'd once reserved for newborn colts. Her clothes were quality, a riding skirt of fine wool boots that spoke of money and taste. But it was her face that stopped him cold as another lightning flash illuminated her features. She looked like Elena. Not exactly. This woman's face was rounder, softer, with the same high cheekbones and olive skin, but there was something hauntingly familiar about her features, as if the storm had conjured her from his deepest longings and delivered her to his doorstep. "Miguel," she whispered without opening her eyes, her voice barely audible above the thunder. "Miguel, they found us." Cole's hands stilled. Miguel, the name hit him like a physical blow, bringing with it a flood of memories he'd thought safely buried. Miguel Reyes, Elena's brother. Miguel, who'd introduced Cole to his sister 7 years ago in San Antonio. Miguel, who died in a Comanche raid 2 years back or so, the reports had claimed. The woman she had to be Miguel's wife, though Cole had never met her, stirred in his arms. Her eyelids fluttered open, revealing eyes the color of strong coffee, and for a heartbeat they stared at each other in the storm-washed darkness. "Dios mío." She breathed, her hand rising to touch his face with trembling fingers. "Miguel, is it really you?" Cole's world tilted on its axis. Standing there in the creek with this stranger in his arms, he understood why she'd mistaken him for her husband. Because when she looked at him, she saw the face of a dead man, a man whose ghost had haunted Cole's dreams for 2 long years. "I'm not Miguel," he said gently, his voice barely carrying over the storm. "My name is Cole McKenzie. You're safe now." But even as he spoke the words, he wondered if they were true. Because the woman in his arms carried secrets in her coffee-colored eyes, and secrets in Texas had a way of getting good men killed. Inside the ranch house, Cole moved with the efficient care of a man who'd tended wounds before. He laid the woman on the bed in what had once been his and Elena's room, then busied himself gathering supplies, clean cloth whiskey, for disinfecting water heated on the wood-burning stove. The storm continued its assault on the windows, but inside the small bedroom, a different kind of tempest was brewing. The woman had slipped back into unconsciousness, but she murmured constantly in Spanish words about water and danger, about someone named Don Alejandro, about a child who must be protected at all costs. As Cole cleaned the cut on her forehead, a clean slice that spoke of a blade rather than accident, he studied her face in the lamplight. The resemblance to Elena was undeniable, but there were differences too. This woman's features held a strength that Elena's gentleness had sometimes lacked, a hardness born of struggle and determination. Her saddlebags, which he'd retrieved from the collapsed mare, sat on the dresser like accusations. Cole had spent 3 years learning to mind his own business, but the ranger in him couldn't resist examining their contents. What he found made his blood run cold. A letter written in flowing Spanish bearing the seal of what appeared to be a Catholic mission. A small glass vial filled with water that seemed to glow with its own inner light. And most disturbing of all, a daguerreotype photograph that made Cole's hands shake. The man in the photograph was Miguel Reyes, but it might as well have been Cole's own reflection. The same dark hair, the same strong jaw, the same eyes that held secrets and sorrow in equal measure. They could have been brothers, these two men separated by nationality and fate. "We were born under the same star," the woman whispered from the bed, startling him from his thoughts. Her eyes were open, now lucid, but filled with a pain that had nothing to do with her physical wounds. "That's what Padre Francisco said when he first saw you both together. Two sides of the same soul, destined to guard the same sacred trust." "I don't understand," Cole said, though part of him, the part that had always felt incomplete since Miguel's death, understood perfectly. The woman struggled to sit up, one hand protectively cradling her belly. "Miguel spoke of you often, Cole McKenzie, his partner, his brother, in all but blood. He said you were the only man who truly understood the old ways, who listened when the land spoke." "Miguel's dead," Cole said flatly, the words tasting like ashes in his mouth. "Died 2 years ago in a Comanche raid outside El Paso." "See, I know. I was his wife." The woman's voice broke on the last word, and Cole saw tears trace silver paths down her cheeks. "But his death was no accident, Cole. He was murdered because he discovered something that powerful men would kill to possess." She reached for the glowing vial with reverent hands. "Agua sagrada, sacred water from the heart of the earth itself. Miguel found the source, learned its secrets from the old Apache medicine men. But Don Alejandro Vega learned of it too, and he wants to control it, to use its power for his own ends." Cole stared at the vial, his mind reeling. He'd always known there was something special about Silver Springs, something that couldn't be explained by geology or groundwater tables. Even in the worst drought years, his creek never ran dry. Animals came from miles around to drink from it, and they always seemed healthier afterward, their coats shinier, their wounds healing faster than nature should allow. "What kind of power?" he asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "The power to heal," the woman said simply. "To cure sickness, to mend broken bodies, perhaps even to extend life itself." Miguel believed it was connected to an underground river system that the Apache considered sacred, a network of springs and wells that stretched across the entire Southwest. Lightning flashed again, and in its brief illumination, Cole saw something else in the woman's eyes, hope and desperate need warring with exhaustion and fear. "My child," she whispered, her hand moving to her belly. "Something is wrong. I've been bleeding and the baby doesn't move as it should." The midwife in Santa Fe said. Her voice trailed off, but the implication hung heavy in the air between them. "You came here for the water," Cole said, understanding flooding through him like a physical force. The woman nodded, tears flowing freely now. "Miguel told me about Silver Springs, said it was connected to the source. If something ever happened to him, if I needed help, I should find you. He said you were a guardian, even if you didn't know it yet." Cole looked at the vial of glowing water, then at the woman who carried Miguel's child and wore Miguel's face in feminine form. Outside, the storm was beginning to weaken, but inside this small room, larger forces were gathering. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Catalina," she replied, and somehow he'd known it would be a name like music, a name that would haunt his dreams. "Catalina Reyes, and you're the man my husband trusted with his life, the man he said would protect what he couldn't." Before Cole could respond, a sound that didn't belong to the storm drifted through the night, the unmistakable sound of approaching hoofbeats. Multiple riders moving fast despite the weather. "They found me," Catalina whispered, terror replacing hope in her dark eyes. Dios mío, they found me. Cole moved to the window, peering out into the lightning-split darkness. In the distance, he could see torches bobbing through the rain riders, approaching his ranch with purpose and determination. How many men does Vega have? He asked, already checking his weapons. Enough, Catalina replied, struggling to stand. And they were led by a man named Kane, Captain James Kane. He's the one who killed Miguel, and he won't hesitate to kill us both. The name hit Cole like a sledgehammer. James Kane, the Union Army captain who'd gone bad after the war, selling his services to the highest bidder. Cole had been hunting Kane for 2 years, ever since the bastard had orchestrated the Comanche raid that had really been a cover for stealing Army payroll. The raid that had killed Elena and Rose when they'd been traveling to visit Elena's family. Kane hadn't just murdered Miguel. He'd murdered Cole's entire family. Get to the back room, Cole told Catalina, his voice carrying the quiet authority of a man accustomed to being obeyed in dangerous situations. There's a rifle in the cabinet and a window that looks out on the creek. If things go bad, you run for the water and don't look back. I won't leave you to face them alone. You will if I tell you to, Cole said, his voice hardening. Your child's life depends on it. And Catalina, he turned to face her, and she saw something in his eyes that had been sleeping for 3 years, purpose, determination, in the cold steel that had once made him one of the most feared rangers in Texas. Miguel was my brother in all the ways that mattered. That makes his wife and child my responsibility. That makes his fight my fight. The sound of hoofbeats was closer now, and Cole could hear voices calling out through the storm. Soon, very soon, the reckoning would begin. But for the first time in 3 years, Cole McKenzie felt truly alive. As he checked his Winchester one final time, a small voice called out from the back room of the house, a voice that shouldn't have been there. Cole, Papa, who are the bad men? Cole's blood ran cold. In all the commotion of the storm and Catalina's arrival, he'd forgotten about Ayana, the 8-year-old Apache boy he'd been secretly caring for since finding him half dead from starvation 6 months ago. The child whose presence he'd kept hidden from everyone, even the few neighbors who occasionally stopped by. Stay hidden, little one, Cole called back in Apache, his voice gentle despite the circumstances. Papa will keep you safe. Catalina's eyes widened as she heard the exchange. You have a son, not by blood, Cole replied, moving toward the front door, but by choice, and that's what matters. As the riders drew closer to Silver Springs Ranch, Cole realized that this night would change everything. The storm had brought more than just rain to his doorstep. It had brought his past, his future, and a chance for redemption that he'd thought lost forever. The sacred waters of Silver Springs continued their eternal song, indifferent to the storm, indifferent to the approaching danger. But if Cole had been listening, really listening, he might have heard something else in the water's voice, something that sounded almost like welcome. The first chapter of a new legend was about to begin. The riders materialized from the storm like phantoms of vengeance, their torches cutting through the darkness as they surrounded Silver Springs Ranch. Cole counted at least 8 men, all heavily armed, all moving with the practiced precision of soldiers who'd killed before and would kill again. From his position by the front window, Cole could see their leader, a tall man with silver hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to command. Even through the rain and distance, there was something familiar about the way he sat his horse, something that made Cole's trigger finger itch with recognition. McKenzie. The voice cut through the storm like a blade, cultured and commanding. Captain James Kane, representing the interests of Don Alejandro Vega. We know you're harboring a fugitive. Send her out and we can settle this like civilized men. Cole felt his blood turn to ice. Kane. The bastard who'd orchestrated the fake Comanche raid that killed Elena and Rose. The man Cole had been hunting for 2 years, and now he'd come calling like death itself. This is private property, Kane, Cole called back his Winchester trained on the man's chest. State your business or ride on. Kane's laughter was like breaking glass in the night. My business is with the woman McKenzie. She's stolen property belonging to Don Alejandro, documents, maps, certain artifacts. Return them and we'll be on our way. Haven't seen any woman, Cole lied smoothly. But you're welcome to water your horses at the creek before you move on. How generous. You know, McKenzie, I've been looking forward to this meeting for quite some time. Kane's voice carried a note of anticipation that made Cole's skin crawl. Ever since that unfortunate incident with your family 2 years ago, amazing how often good men meet tragic ends when they involve themselves in affairs that don't concern them. The words hit Cole like physical blows. Kane wasn't just admitting to Elena and Rose's murder, he was gloating about it. Cole papa, Ayana's small voice drifted from the back room, speaking in Apache. The water spirits are angry. They say the bad men come to steal the sacred tears of the Earth Mother. Before Cole could respond, Kane's voice rose again, but this time there was surprise in it. Well, sounds like you've been busy, McKenzie. Harboring Apache brats now. Don Alejandro will be very interested to hear that. Cole's jaw tightened. The boy had gifts, visions, dreams that sometimes came true. If Ayana said the water spirits were angry, then trouble was coming from more directions than just Kane's guns. I'm losing patience, McKenzie, Kane called out. The woman comes out now, or we come in shooting. Your choice. That's when Cole heard the soft scrape of a boot on wooden flooring behind him. He turned to find Catalina emerging from the back room, Ayana's small hand clasped in hers. The boy's dark eyes were wide with an otherworldly knowledge that no 8-year-old should possess. He dreams of the sacred places, Catalina whispered, looking down at Ayana with wonder. This child, he carries the old blood, doesn't he? His grandmother was a medicine woman, Cole replied quietly. Found him half-starved after soldiers killed his family. Been caring for him ever since. Catalina knelt beside Ayana, speaking to him in fluent Apache. The boy's eyes grew even wider, and he began speaking rapidly in the same tongue. Cole caught fragments, words about water and spirits, about a great danger coming from the south, about a man with dead eyes who sought to poison the sacred springs. What's he saying? Cole asked. He says the water told him I would come, that the three of us are meant to protect the sacred places together. Catalina's voice carried a note of awe. He says you are his true father even though you don't share blood, and that Elena watches over all of us from the spirit world. Cole felt something break open in his chest, a dam of grief and guilt that had been holding back 3 years of pain. Elena had always wanted to adopt Apache children to bridge the gap between their two peoples. If she were here now, McKenzie, Kane's voice shattered the moment. Time's up! The first shots rang out as Kane's men opened fire on the house. Windows exploded inward, showering them with glass. Cole pushed Catalina and Ayana toward the back room as bullets splintered the wooden walls around them. The tunnel, Ayana said urgently in Apache. Grandmother's tunnel to the sacred spring. I can show you. Cole's eyes widened. In all the months he'd cared for the boy, Ayana had never mentioned a tunnel. But then there were many things about this land that Cole was only beginning to understand. Where, he asked. Ayana pointed toward the stone fireplace. Behind the crying stones, grandmother carved the path when the white soldiers first came to steal the water. As if responding to the boy's words, one of the hearthstones shifted slightly. Cole stared in amazement as Ayana pressed his small hand against what appeared to be solid rock, and a section of the wall swung inward on hidden hinges. My God, Catalina breathed. How long has this been here? Since before my grandfather built this house, Cole realized. The Apaches always said this land was sacred. I thought they just meant the spring. More gunfire erupted outside, followed by the sound of boots on the front porch. Kane's men were preparing to storm the house. Go, Cole told them, shoving supplies into a pack. Follow the tunnel. I'll hold them off and catch up. No, Catalina said firmly. We stay together. Miguel taught me to shoot, and this child has gifts we'll need. Before Cole could argue, Ayana spoke up in English, his young voice carrying an eerie certainty. The spirits say we must all go together. The bad man with dead eyes seeks to follow the sacred path, but only the three together can close the way behind us. The front door exploded inward. Kane and 3 of his men burst into the house, guns drawn, expecting to find cowering prey. Instead, they found only empty rooms and the fading echo of footsteps. Damn it, Kane snarled, kicking over a chair. Search everything. They can't have gone far. But Cole, Catalina, and Ayana were already deep underground following a tunnel carved from living rock by Apache hands generations ago. The passage was narrow but well made with symbols carved into the walls that seemed to glow with their own inner light. How is this possible? Catalina whispered as they moved through the underground passage. Apache engineering, Cole replied, his voice filled with new respect for his grandmother's people. They've been protecting these springs for centuries. We just never knew how deep their preparations went. Ayana led them through the twisting passages with the confidence of someone following a familiar path. The boy's eyes seemed to see things in the darkness that Cole and Catalina missed, handholds carved into the rock, hidden chambers stocked with supplies, ancient symbols that told stories of guardians and sacred trusts. There, Ayana said, finally pointing ahead to where pale light filtered down from above. The heart chamber. They emerged into a natural cavern lit by phosphorescent minerals in the rock walls. At the center of the chamber lay a pool of water so clear it seemed like liquid crystal. This was the true source of Silver Springs, not just a creek, but a window into the underground river system that the Apache had guarded for generations. The water, Catalina breathed, moving toward the pool. It's the same as Miguel's vial, but stronger, purer. She knelt beside the sacred spring, and as her hands touched the water, something miraculous happened. The bleeding that had been slowly draining her strength stopped completely. Color returned to her pale cheeks, and for the first time in weeks, she felt her baby move with strong, healthy kicks. The child grows strong, Ayana said solemnly. The water knows its own. But their moment of wonder was shattered by voices echoing down from the tunnel behind them. Cain had found the hidden entrance. They're coming, Cole said, checking his ammunition. How many more ways out of here? Ayana pointed to several dark passages leading away from the central chamber. 7 paths, all lead to sacred places. But the water spirits are angry at the dead-eyed man. They will not let him pass easily. As if summoned by the boy's words, the water in the sacred pool began to glow more brightly. The very air in the cavern seemed to thicken with an otherworldly presence, and Cole could swear he heard voices whispering in languages older than human memory. Cole McKenzie, a new voice called from the tunnel entrance. Not Cain, someone else. Someone whose accent carried the hint of Apache heritage. Cole McKenzie, son of 2 eagles flying. Your grandmother's people call to you. A figure emerged from the tunnel, an Apache warrior in traditional dress but carrying modern weapons. His face was weathered by decades of desert sun, and his eyes held the wisdom of someone who'd walked between 2 worlds. Joseph Running Bear, the man said, inclining his head respectfully. Your brother in blood and spirit. Cole stared at the warrior, understanding flooding through him like a physical force. You're my brother. My real brother. Half-brother, Joseph corrected with a slight smile. Same Apache mother, different fathers. She gave you to the white world to protect you from the wars that were coming. But the sacred springs call their guardians home. Catalina looked between the 2 men, seeing the resemblance now that she knew to look for it. The same dark eyes, the same proud bearing, the same instinctive connection to the land around them. Cain's right behind me, Joseph warned, but I brought friends. As if summoned by his words, more Apache warriors began emerging from the various tunnels, men and women who moved like shadows armed with both traditional weapons and captured army rifles. They spread out around the chamber, with practiced efficiency preparing for a siege. How many? Cole asked. Enough, Joseph replied. But Cain has something we didn't expect. Artillery, howitzers he stole from the army depot in El Paso. He means to collapse these tunnels and bury the sacred springs forever if he can't control them. The implications hit Cole like a landslide. Cain wasn't just after Catalina and the maps. He was planning to destroy the entire underground river system that sustained life across hundreds of miles of desert. We can't let that happen, Catalina said fiercely. These waters, they're not just about healing individual people. The whole ecosystem depends on them. Destroy the springs and the desert dies. Ayana moved to the edge of the sacred pool, his young face grave with responsibility beyond his years. The spirits show me a vision, he said quietly. A great sacrifice must be made to save the sacred waters. But the sacrifice will also bring new life. Before anyone could ask what he meant, the sound of approaching boots echoed from multiple tunnels. Cain had found reinforcements, and he was coming from several directions at once. Positions! Joseph commanded his warriors, fading into defensive positions among the rock formations. Let them come to us. But Cole was studying the chamber with tactical eyes, noting the way the tunnels converged, the height of the ceiling, the natural choke points. Joseph, he said slowly, what would happen if someone collapsed the main entrance tunnel? Would trap Cain's force in here with us, Joseph replied. but also trap us. Not all of us, Cole said, looking at the 7 passages leading away from the chamber. Catalina and Ayana could escape through one of the other routes while we hold Kane here. No, Catalina said firmly. We stay together. That's what Ayana's visions showed. The 3 of us must face this together. The boy's safety fee. The boy is safer here than anywhere else, Ayana interrupted, his young voice carrying a startling authority. This is where the spirits are strongest. This is where the old promises will be kept. The first of Kane's men appeared at the tunnel entrance, moving cautiously into the phosphorescent glow of the chamber. Behind them came Kane himself, his silver hair gleaming in the strange light, his pale eyes taking in the ancient carvings and sacred pool with cold calculation. Magnificent, Kane breathed, stepping into the chamber with his gun drawn. Absolutely magnificent. Do you have any idea what this place is worth, McKenzie? The healing properties alone could make a man immortal. Imagine what governments would pay for that kind of power. Some things aren't for sale, Cole replied, his Winchester trained on the man's heart. And some debts can only be paid in blood. Kane's smile was razor thin. Ah, yes, your departed family. I wondered when you'd work up the courage to face me about that. Tell me, McKenzie, did they scream when my boys cut them down? Did your little girl call for her daddy to save her? The words hit Cole like physical blows, but instead of rage, he felt a strange calm descend over him. Elena's voice seemed to whisper in his ear, reminding him of the man she'd fallen in love with, not a killer driven by vengeance, but a protector guided by justice. They died with honor, Cole said quietly, something you'll never understand. Honor doesn't stop bullets, McKenzie, and it certainly doesn't. Kane's words were cut off as Ayana stepped forward, his small figure somehow commanding attention from every person in the chamber. When the boy spoke, his voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate with the living rock around them. James Kane, Ayana said in perfect English, though his eyes held depths that belonged to someone far older. The spirits of the sacred waters know your true name. They know the children you have murdered, the promises you have broken, the sacred places you have defiled. Kane's face went pale. What the hell? You seek power over life and death. Ayana continued, his young voice growing stronger. But you are already dead inside. The water spirits will not suffer your touch upon their sacred gift. As the boy spoke, the water in the sacred pool began to glow more brightly, casting dancing shadows on the cavern walls. A low humming seemed to emanate from the rock itself, growing stronger with each word. Enough of this mystical nonsense, Kane snarled, raising his gun toward Ayana. That's when Cole moved. 3 years of grief and guilt and carefully contained rage exploded into action as he threw himself between Kane and the boy. His Winchester spoke once, twice, the shots echoing like thunder in the confined space. Kane staggered backward, crimson spreading across his chest, but his own gun was already firing. The bullet caught Cole high in the shoulder, spinning him around and sending him crashing into the rocky wall. Cole! Catalina's scream echoed through the chamber as she rushed to his side, her own rifle forgotten. But the real battle was just beginning. Kane's men opened fire from the tunnel entrance, while Joseph's warriors returned fire from their concealed positions. The ancient chamber became a battlefield filled with smoke and the crash of gunfire. Through it all, Ayana stood calmly beside the sacred pool, his small hands pressed against the water's surface. Where his fingers touched, the glowing liquid ripples spread outward in patterns that seemed to follow some cosmic design. The water remembers, the boy said, his voice somehow audible above the gunfire. It remembers every guardian who has protected it, every sacrifice made in its name, and it chooses to give one last gift to those who would preserve its sacred trust. The glow from the pool intensified, bathing the entire chamber in ethereal light. Kane's men began to stumble, their shots going wide, as something in the light itself seemed to disorient them. What's happening to them? Catalina asked, as she pressed cloth against Cole's wounded shoulder. The water spirits defend their own, Joseph called out, never taking his eyes off the enemy. But this is just the beginning. Kane has more men coming, and those howitzers. We need to end this now. Cole struggled to sit up despite his wound, his mind working furiously. The entrance tunnel, he said. If we can collapse it, trap them in here. You die with them, Catalina protested. Not necessarily, Ayana said calmly. The spirits show me another way. But it requires trust in the old promises and faith in water's eternal memory. Before anyone could ask what he meant, the boy stepped into the sacred pool. The moment his feet touched the glowing water, the light intensified dramatically and the chamber itself seemed to come alive. Ancient carvings on the walls began to glow with the same phosphorescent light as the water. The humming sound grew stronger, becoming a song that seemed to resonate in the very bones of everyone present. And then impossibly, the water began to rise. Not flooding, rising in defiance of gravity itself, forming spirals and streams that danced through the air like living things. Cain's men stopped firing, staring in terror at forces they couldn't understand or fight. "This is impossible," Cain gasped, blood foaming at his lips as he struggled to remain standing. "No," Cole said, understanding flooding through him as he watched Ayana conducting the sacred waters like a symphony. "This is faith. This is what happens when you believe in something greater than yourself." The dancing waters began to converge on Cain and his men, not to drown them, but to show them visions. In the glowing streams, each man saw his own crimes reflected back at him, every innocent life taken, every sacred place defiled, every promise broken. One by one, Cain's men threw down their weapons, overwhelmed by the weight of their own guilt made manifest. But Cain himself fought against the visions, his pale eyes blazing with defiant hatred. "I won't be broken by parlor tricks and savage superstition," he snarled, raising his gun toward Ayana one final time. The shot that followed didn't come from Cain's weapon. Catalina's rifle spoke with deadly precision, the bullet taking Cain's center mass and sending him tumbling backward into the sacred pool. The moment Cain's body hit the water, the dancing streams converged on him like living things. But instead of dragging him down, they seemed to be cleansing him, washing away layers of hatred and corruption until only a broken man remained. "Elena," Cain whispered with his dying breath, and for a moment his pale eyes seemed to see something beyond the physical world. "Elena, I'm sorry. I'm so very sorry." Then he was gone, his body sinking into the depths of the sacred pool, leaving only ripples that gradually stilled. The supernatural light began to fade, and the dancing waters settled back into their natural flow. Ayana stepped out of the pool, looking somehow older despite his young years. "It is finished," the boy said simply. "The water spirits are at peace." Joseph emerged from his position among the rocks, studying the surrendered men with calculating eyes. "These ones will spread word of what they've seen. The sacred places will be safe for another generation." "And Vega?" Catalina asked. "Without Cain, without proof of the spring's power, he becomes just another rich man with impossible stories," Joseph replied, "the kind who usually destroys himself given enough time." Cole struggled to his feet, supported by Catalina's strong arm. Around them, the ancient chamber hummed with residual power, but the immediate danger had passed. "What happens now?" he asked. Ayana looked up at him with eyes that held all the wisdom of his ancestors. "Now we go home, Cole Papa. Back to Silver Springs, where the water runs clear and the spirits remember those who guard their sacred trust." As they prepared to leave the heart chamber through one of the hidden passages, Cole took one last look at the sacred pool. In its depths, he thought he saw faces Elena and Rose Miguel and countless other guardians who had given their lives to protect this place. They seemed to be at peace, and somehow he knew that their sacrifice had meaning beyond anything gold or power could provide. The war for the sacred waters was over. But the real healing was just beginning. 3 months had passed since the confrontation in the heart chamber, and Silver Springs Ranch had been transformed from a place of isolation into something that resembled a real home. The house had been rebuilt and expanded with rooms enough for the growing family that called it home. Cole stood on the front porch, watching the sunset paint the Texas sky in shades of gold and crimson. His shoulder had healed well, though it still ached when storms approached. But the deeper wounds, the ones that had festered in his soul for 3 years, those were finally beginning to mend. The sound of laughter drifted from inside the house where Catalina was teaching Ayana to read from one of Miguel's journals. The boy had proven to be a quick student, absorbing knowledge with the same ease he absorbed visions from the spirit world. "You're brooding again," Catalina said as she emerged from the house, her pregnancy now showing clearly in the graceful curve of her belly. 7 months along, and both mother and child were thriving under the influence of the sacred waters. "Just thinking," Cole replied, slipping his arm around her waist. The gesture had become natural over the past months, as natural as breathing or the steady flow of Silver Springs. About what? About promises, about the future, about whether we're doing right by everyone we've lost. Catalina leaned into his embrace, her hand finding his and intertwining their fingers. Elena would be happy for us, you know. Miguel, too. They wouldn't want us to live in the past forever. Cole nodded, knowing she was right. In the weeks following Cain's death, he'd struggled with guilt over his growing feelings for Catalina. It had taken a vision brought on by drinking directly from the sacred spring to set his heart at ease. In that vision, he'd seen Elena standing beside the creek, radiant and whole, with little Rose playing at her feet. She'd smiled at him with all the love they'd shared and spoken words that had finally freed him from his prison of grief. Love doesn't diminish when it's shared, mi corazón. It multiplies. Care for my sister as you cared for me. Raise her children as you would have raised ours. Live, Cole. Live for all of us. When he'd told Catalina about the vision, she'd wept in his arms and shared her own struggle. Miguel had come to her in dreams, blessing their union and asking Cole to be the father his children would need. Any word from Joseph? Catalina asked, pulling him back to the present. He sent a message last week. Vega's operation has collapsed completely. Amazing how quickly an empire crumbles when it's built on lies and greed. Cole's smile held a note of satisfaction. Most of his holdings are being distributed to the families he displaced. And the other springs, protected. Joseph and his people have taken up the guardianship, working with the Mexican authorities to establish protected zones around the sacred sites. Cole looked down at the woman in his arms. Our children will grow up in a world where the old woes are remembered and honored. As if summoned by his words, Ayana appeared on the porch, his dark eyes bright with excitement. Cole, Papa, Mama, Catalina, come quickly. The baby comes. Cole felt his heart skip a beat. Now, but you said next month. The water spirits have their own timing, Ayana said solemnly, and this child is eager to meet his family. They rushed inside where Catalina had already made her way to the bedroom. The midwife, an elderly Apache woman named Sophia, who'd been staying with them for the past week, was already preparing for the birth. How are you feeling? Cole asked, taking Catalina's hand as another contraction swept through her. Like I'm about to split in half, she gasped, then managed a smile. But strong. The sacred water makes me strong. The labor was long but not difficult. As the hours passed, Cole found himself thinking about family, not just the one they were creating, but the extended family that had grown around Silver Springs. Joseph visited regularly, as did other Apache from the reservation. Mexican families who'd lost their land to Vega's schemes had been welcomed as neighbors and friends. Even some of Cain's former men, cleansed by their experience in the heart chamber, had asked to stay and help protect the sacred places. Just before dawn, as the first light painted the windows gold, a child's cry filled the house. A son, Sophia announced, placing the infant in Catalina's arms, strong and healthy with the mark of the water spirits upon him. Cole leaned over to look at the baby, and his breath caught in his throat. The child was beautiful, with Miguel's dark hair and Catalina's delicate features. But there was something else, a sense of peace and purpose that seemed to radiate from his tiny form. What will you name him? Sophia asked. Catalina looked up at Cole, her eyes shining with tears of joy. Miguel Esteban McKenzie, she said quietly, for his father and for the man who will raise him. Miguel Esteban, Cole repeated, testing the name on his tongue. It felt right, like a promise being kept. Welcome to the world, little one. Ayane approached the bed carefully, his young face grave with responsibility. May I? He asked, reaching toward the baby. Catalina nodded, and Ayana placed his small hand gently on the infant's forehead. For a moment, the room seemed to glow with the same phosphorescent light they'd seen in the heart chamber. The spirits bless this child, Ayana said in Apache, then switched to English. He will be a bridge between worlds, a guardian of the sacred places and a keeper of the old promises. As if responding to the blessing, baby Miguel opened his eyes and looked directly at Cole. In those dark depths, Cole saw intelligence and awareness that shouldn't have been possible in such a young child. He knows you, Catalina whispered. He knows his papa. Cole felt something break open in his chest, not the dam of grief this time, but a reservoir of love he'd thought lost forever. As he held his new son for the first time, he made a silent promise to Miguel, to Elena, to all the guardians who had come before. This child would grow up knowing his heritage, understanding the sacred trust that had been passed down through generations. He would learn to walk between the white world and the Apache world, to respect both traditions while forging his own path. The christening took place a month later beside Silver Springs, with both Catholic and Apache ceremonies blessing the child. Padre Francisco had come down from Mesa Sagrada for the occasion, his weathered face creased with joy as he performed the traditional rites. "This child carries the blood of three peoples," the old priest said as he sprinkled sacred water on baby Miguel's forehead. "Mexican, Apache, and now Anglo through adoption. He will be a living symbol of what we can become when we choose love over hatred, cooperation over conflict." Joseph Running Bear stepped forward to perform the Apache naming ceremony, painting symbols on the baby's forehead with clay mixed with water from the sacred spring. "I give this child the name Sunlight on Water," Joseph said in Apache, then translated for the mixed crowd of witnesses. "For he brings light to all who see him, and his life will flow like the sacred streams, pure healing and eternal." As the ceremonies concluded, Cole found himself standing with Catalina and Ayana beside the clear-running creek. The boy had grown taller in recent months, his visions becoming clearer and more detailed. Just that morning, he'd described a dream of vast changes coming to the territory, railroads and towns, progress and problems, but always with the sacred waters flowing beneath it all, sustaining life and hope. "What do you see for him?" Cole asked, nodding toward baby Miguel, sleeping peacefully in his mother's arms. "What kind of future?" Ayana's dark eyes grew distant as he gazed into the flowing water. "I see a man who speaks for those who cannot speak for themselves. I see someone who builds bridges where others would build walls. And I see—" He paused, his young brow furrowing with concentration. "What?" Catalina prompted gently. "I see many children," Ayana said with sudden certainty. "Not just this little one, but others. Children who have lost their families. Children who need homes and love and purpose. This place will become a haven for them, a school where they learn the old ways and the new ways together." Cole and Catalina exchanged glances, understanding passing between them like a shared breath. They'd already discussed the possibility of expanding their family through adoption, following Elena's dream of bridging cultures and communities. "How many children?" Cole asked, half joking. Ayana's smile was radiant. "As many as the sacred waters can bless, Cole Papa, as many as love can hold." As the guests dispersed and evening settled over Silver Springs Ranch, Cole and Catalina found themselves alone on the porch with their children. Baby Miguel slept in his mother's arms, while Ayana sat cross-legged on the wooden planks, sketching in a journal that Joseph had given him. "What are you drawing?" Catalina asked. "The vision from this afternoon," Ayana replied, holding up his sketch. "The school that will grow here. See buildings around the spring gardens, where the children learn to grow food corrals, where they learn to care for animals." Cole studied the detailed drawing, marveling at the boy's artistic ability. The sketch showed Silver Springs Ranch transformed into something between a school and a community, dozens of buildings arranged in harmony with the natural landscape, with the sacred spring at its heart. "And this," Cole pointed to a large building at the center of the complex. "The Learning Lodge," Ayana explained, "where the elders teach the young ones about the sacred ways about healing and protecting and sharing the gifts of the earth." "It's beautiful," Catalina said softly, "but it would take years to build something like this. Decades. Good things take time to grow properly," a familiar voice said from the darkness. Padre Francisco emerged from the shadows, having stayed behind after the other guests departed. "Like love, like trust, like the deep understanding that comes from walking between worlds." The old priest settled into one of the porch chairs with a grateful sigh. "I've been thinking about what the boys said today about this place becoming a school. There's wisdom in the vision." "You think it could actually work?" Cole asked. "I think it's already working," Padre Francisco replied, gesturing toward their small family. "Look what you've accomplished in just a few months. An Apache boy, a Mexican woman, an Anglo rancher, and now a child who carries the blood of all three peoples. If that's not a school for living in harmony, I don't know what is." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the eternal song of Silver Springs. Somewhere in the darkness, a night bird called to its mate and was answered by a voice that spoke of partnership and devotion. "There's something else," Ayana said suddenly, his young voice carrying the weight of prophecy. "Something the water spirits showed me during the ceremony." What is it, little one? Cole asked gently. Others will come, Ayana said, his dark eyes reflecting starlight. Others like us who have lost family but found each other. The sacred waters call to broken hearts, and broken hearts heal best when they help others heal. More children. Yes, but also adults. Men and women who have lost their way, who need purpose and community, and the chance to start again. Ayana's smile was radiant in the darkness. This place will become what Elena always dreamed, a home where all peoples can learn from each other, where the old ways and new ways come together like streams flowing into a mighty river. Cole felt tears sting his eyes as he thought of his first wife's dreams. Elena had always believed that the various peoples of the Southwest could live in harmony if they just had the chance to know each other as individuals rather than enemies. She would have loved this, he whispered. She does love it, Catalina said softly, her hand finding his in the darkness. Love doesn't end with death, mi corazón. It just changes form. Elena's love lives on in the choices we make, in the children we raise, in the bridges we build between our peoples. Baby Miguel stirred in his mother's arms, making soft sounds that seemed almost like words. As Catalina adjusted his blanket, the child's tiny hand emerged to grasp Cole's finger with surprising strength. He knows his papa, Ayana observed with satisfaction. The spirits whispered to him in his dreams, telling him stories of all the guardians who came before. He will grow up strong in the knowledge of who he is and what he's meant to protect. And what about you, Cole asked the boy. What do the spirits show you about your own future? Ayana was quiet for a long moment, his young face serious in the starlight. I will be the bridge, he said finally, between the old blood and the new, between the Apache way and the white man's way. I will help the lost children find their place in the world, and I will teach them to listen to the voices that speak without words. That's a heavy burden for someone so young, Padre Francisco observed. All gifts come with responsibility. Ayana replied with wisdom beyond his years. But I won't carry it alone. I'll have Cole Papa and Mama Catalina and little Miguel and all the other children who will come to learn here. The sacred waters support all who serve in their name. As if summoned by his words, a gentle breeze stirred the cottonwoods around the ranch house, carrying with it the sound of flowing water and the scent of sage and wildflowers. It was a reminder that they were part of something larger than themselves, a continuum of guardians stretching back to the beginning of time and forward to generations yet unborn. We should get some sleep, Catalina said eventually, rising with baby Miguel in her arms. Tomorrow brings new challenges, new opportunities to live up to the trust that's been placed in us. But as they prepared to go inside, Cole paused for one last look at the land that had become so much more than just a ranch. In the moonlight, he could almost see the vision that Ayana had drawn: buildings and gardens, children and teachers, a community built around the sacred principles of healing and protection. It would take time, as Padre Francisco had said, years, perhaps decades, to fully realize the dream. But they had something more valuable than time. They had purpose, love, and the blessing of waters that had flowed pure and strong since the world was young. Thank you, Cole whispered to the night, addressing Elena, Miguel, and all the spirits who retry JN continue edit watched over them. Thank you for bringing us together, for showing us the way forward. A soft splash from the direction of the creek caught his attention. As Cole looked toward the sacred spring, he could have sworn he saw two figures standing by the water's edge, a woman with Elena's gentle smile and a man with Miguel's proud bearing. They raised their hands in blessing, then faded like morning mist, leaving only the eternal song of flowing water. Epilogue. 5 years later. The morning sun painted Silver Springs in shades of gold as Cole McKenzie stood on the expanded porch of what had once been a simple ranch house. Below him, the courtyard buzzed with activity as 24 children of various ages and backgrounds prepared for their daily lessons. Ayana, now 13 and tall for his age, led a group of younger children in morning exercises beside the sacred spring. His voice carried clearly across the water as he taught them the Apache words for gratitude, respect, and harmony. Remember, he called out in English, switching languages with the fluid ease that had become his trademark. The water gives life freely, but it asks us to give back in service to others. Cole smiled as he watched his adopted son guide the children through the ritual. Some were Apache, some Mexican, some Anglo orphans and strays who'd found their way to Silver Spring School over the past 5 years. Each had arrived broken in some way, carrying the wounds of loss or abandonment. Each had found healing in the sacred waters, in the love of their extended family. "Papa Cole," a young voice called from the corral, where 8-year-old Maria was working with a colt that had been born lame. The Mexican girl had arrived 3 years ago, her parents dead from cholera, her own leg twisted from birth. The sacred waters had strengthened her body, but more importantly, the community had given her purpose. She had a gift with horses that bordered on the supernatural. "The little one is ready," Maria announced proudly. "He can run without pain now." Cole felt his chest swell with pride as he watched the formerly lame colt gallop around the corral with perfect grace. Healing came in many forms at Silver Springs, sometimes through the mystical properties of the sacred water, but more often through the simple power of love and acceptance. "Cole," Catalina's voice called from behind him, "breakfast is ready and we have visitors coming up the road." He turned to see his wife standing in the doorway, 5-year-old Miguel perched on her hip, while 2-year-old Elena, named for his first wife, clung to her skirts. Catalina was pregnant again, their 4th child together, though they'd lost count of how many children they'd raised over the years. "Who's coming?" Cole asked, moving to relieve her of Miguel's weight. "Joseph, with 3 new children from the reservation, and Padre Francisco, with correspondence from the territorial government." Catalina's expression grew serious. "I think it's about the school's official recognition. For 2 years they had been working with sympathetic officials to gain legal status for Silver Springs School. The challenge wasn't academic. Their students consistently outperformed children in traditional schools, learning not just reading and mathematics, but practical skills like animal husbandry, agriculture, and basic medicine. The challenge was political, as many territorial officials remained suspicious of any institution that celebrated Apache culture and alongside Anglo traditions. "Papa, look, what I made." 5-year-old Miguel tugged at Cole's shirt, holding up a carved wooden horse. The boy had inherited his Apache grandfather's skill with woodworking, along with an artistic eye that amazed everyone who saw his creations. "It's beautiful, mijo," Cole said, examining the intricate carving. "What kind of wood did you use?" "Ayana helped me find a piece of cottonwood that the sacred waters touched," Miguel explained with the matter-of-fact acceptance of the mystical that all the children shared. He said it would make the horse spirit stronger. Before Cole could respond, the sound of approaching horses drew his attention to the road. Joseph Running Bear rode at the head of a small group, his weathered face creased with what might have been satisfaction. Behind him came Padre Francisco, looking older but still vital, and 3 Apache children who huddled together with the wariness of young animals. "Joseph," Ayana called out, abandoning his lesson to run toward his mentor. The boy switched to rapid Apache as he greeted the older man, but Cole caught enough words to understand that something significant had happened. "What news?" Cole asked as the group dismounted. Joseph's smile was broader than Cole had seen in years. "The territorial governor has agreed to grant Silver Springs School official recognition as an educational institution. More than that, he's offering federal funding to expand the program." Catalina gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Truly, Padre Francisco brought the documents," Joseph confirmed, "along with a personal letter from the governor expressing his admiration for what you have accomplished here." The old priest dismounted with careful dignity, producing a leather portfolio from his saddlebags. "The letter is quite remarkable," he said, his voice carrying wonder. "The governor writes that Silver Springs has become a model for peaceful coexistence that other territories are eager to emulate." Cole accepted the documents with hands that trembled slightly. After years of struggle of fighting skepticism and outright hostility from some officials, recognition felt almost too good to be true. "There are conditions, of course," Padre Francisco continued. "The curriculum must include standard academic subjects alongside the cultural teachings. You'll need certified instructors in addition to the traditional teachers." "We can manage that," Catalina said quickly. "I've been corresponding with teachers in San Antonio who are interested in our methods." "And the children?" Cole gestured toward the 3 newcomers who still hung back nervously. "Orphans from the reservation," Joseph explained. "Their parents died in the influenza outbreak last winter. The tribal council asked if Silver Springs might have room for them." Cole looked at the 3 children, 2 boys and a girl ranging in age from perhaps 7 to 12. They had the hollow-eyed look of children who'd seen too much loss, but underneath the wariness, he could see the same spark that had drawn him to Ayana years ago. There's always room, he said simply. Ayana, come help our new friends get settled. As the teenagers approached, the newcomers switching between Apache and English with practiced ease, Cole felt a familiar sense of rightness settle over him. This was what Elena had dreamed of, what Miguel had died, protecting a place where children could grow up, learning that differences in culture or background were sources of strength, not division. There's something else, Joseph said quietly, drawing Cole aside. Word of Silver Springs has spread beyond the territory. I've received inquiries from families as far away as Colorado and New Mexico asking if their children might attend school here. How many families? Dozens, maybe more. Joseph's expression grew serious. You'll need to decide soon how large you want this to become. Growth brings opportunity, but also complications. Cole nodded, understanding the weight of the decision they faced. Silver Springs had grown organically from a family refuge into a small school, but the prospect of becoming a major educational institution brought challenges they'd never faced. We'll need to discuss it as a family, he said. All of us, you and Padre Francisco included. This place belongs to everyone who's helped build it. Speaking of building, Catalina interjected, approaching with baby Elena on her hip. We'll need more dormitories if we're going to accept many new students. In a proper schoolhouse, the main room is getting crowded. The spring can sustain a larger community, Ayana said, having overheard their conversation. I've been having dreams about it, visions of Silver Springs as a place where hundreds of children learn together. The water spirits approve of the growth as long as we remember our sacred responsibilities. Cole looked around at the bustling courtyard where children of multiple cultures worked and played together with easy acceptance. Apache boys helped Mexican girls with their horse training. Anglo children learned traditional Apache crafts from Ayana. Spanish, English, and Apache languages mixed in a constant flow of communication that somehow felt more natural than any single tongue. What do you think, Elena? He asked, addressing his late wife's spirit as he often did when facing major decisions. Are we ready for this? The answer came not in words, but in the laughter of children, the gentle flow of sacred water, and the warm press of Catalina's hand against his arm. Some questions didn't need to be spoken aloud to be answered. We'll expand carefully, Cole decided. A few families at a time, making sure we don't lose the spirit that makes this place special. And we'll train some of our older students to become teachers themselves, so the knowledge gets passed down properly. The Apache way, Joseph approved. Wisdom shared across generations, growing stronger with each telling. As they discussed the practical details of expansion, young Miguel tugged at Cole's shirt again. Papa, will there be room for my friend? What friend is that, mijo? The boy in my dreams. He has yellow hair and speaks a different language, but he's sad like Maria was when she first came. The water spirits say he needs to come here to learn about healing. Cole and Catalina exchanged glances. Their son had inherited Ayana's gift for prophetic dreams, though his visions tended to focus on individual children rather than grand destinies. Where is this boy? Catalina asked gently. Far away across many rivers, but he's coming. The dreams show him traveling with a wagon train and his family. Miguel's face grew sad. His family won't be with him when he arrives. Another orphan, Cole thought with a familiar tightening in his chest. The West was full of children who'd lost their families to disease, accident, or violence. If Silver Springs could offer them hope and healing, then the expansion was not just justified, but necessary. Then we'll make sure there's a place for him, Cole promised, and for any other child who needs what we have to offer. As the day progressed, Cole found himself standing once again by the sacred spring that had given the ranch its name. The water flowed as clear and strong as ever, its gentle song unchanged despite all the growth and activity around it. Ayana joined him now, tall enough that the top of his head reached Cole's shoulder. The spirits are pleased, the teenager said quietly. They say the water has found its true purpose, not just healing individual hurts, but nourishing an entire community dedicated to understanding and peace. And what about you? Cole asked. Are you ready to help train the teachers who will come here to share the gifts you've been given? Ayana's smile was radiant. I've been ready since the day you found me, Cole Papa. Everything that's happened has been preparing me for this moment to help build a bridge between all the different peoples who call this land home. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the children at their various activities. Near the corral, Maria was teaching one of the new Apache boys how to communicate with horses through touch and patience. By the main building, several teenage students worked together on mathematical problems, switching between Spanish and English as they collaborated. And in the garden, little Elena toddled between the vegetable rows under Catalina's watchful eye, already learning the rhythms of growth and harvest. Elena would be proud, Cole said softly. She is proud, Ayana corrected gently. The spirits of the water carry messages between the worlds. She and Miguel watch over this place and they see what it's becoming. Their love is part of the foundation that makes all of this possible. As the sun reached its zenith, casting everything in bright, clear light, Cole McKenzie felt a deep sense of contentment settle over him. The boy who'd spoken of bridges had grown into a young man capable of building them. The woman who'd arrived bleeding and desperate had become the heart of a thriving community. The children who'd come to them broken had healed enough to help heal others. And the sacred waters flowed on, carrying their eternal promise of renewal and hope to all who would receive it. Silver Springs School would grow, would face new challenges, and discover new possibilities. But its foundation, built on love, respect, and the understanding that all people shared common dreams, would remain as strong and enduring as the sacred waters themselves. Some promises, Cole reflected, were meant to be kept across generations. Some trusts were sacred enough to inspire a lifetime of service. And some loves were powerful enough to heal not just individual hearts, but entire communities, hungry for the hope that came from knowing they belonged somewhere to someone for always. The water sang its eternal song, and Cole McKenzie smiled as he listened to its promise of tomorrow.